Hey y'all, Organizing Higher, welcome or welcome back. In this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about capacity, kind of how I know when I'm at capacity or when I'm reaching my capacity, and then what I do to kind of deal with that. So in general, when I'm at work or in my personal life, when I'm getting to the point where I feel like, oh my gosh, I just have so much to do, and I'm getting that like overwhelmed sense, that overwhelmed feeling, the very first thing that I do is always, a brain dump. So doing my regular capture stage in the GTD process, I go into Todoist and just add in all of those things for the brain dump. Once I've captured everything and I can kind of see the reality of all of the things that are, concerning for me or that are on my mind, then I'm able to move through to the clarify stage and the organize stage. Sometimes after I've clarified things, I realize in my head it's bigger than it actually is in reality. Or sometimes the opposite happens. In my head, it wasn't a big deal, but the reality is this is going to be a huge project that I hadn't thought about before. Then when I move on to organize the things and I'm moving them, I might decide certain things are projects or maybe certain things are just one-off single tasks. Once everything's kind of sorted out, then I'm able to review everything, either as part of a daily review or a weekly review. And that gives me a bigger landscape of everything that I have committed myself to. So visually being able to see everything that I'm doing, including the list of projects that I'm working on, things that are on my calendar, I'm able to get a pretty reasonable sense of, do I actually have the capacity? Do I have the physical, mental, emotional capacity to deal with all of these things? And I especially think about emotional capacity these days. With some things that are going on in my personal life, a task that might take me 5 minutes isn't necessarily going to be a heavy ask in terms of time, but it might be very emotionally charged. And so it's going to take a lot out of me emotionally to have to deal with that thing. And that is a resource that I need to take into consideration. Just because something doesn't take me a lot of time doesn't mean that it's not going to be draining for me. So being able to identify that I'm at capacity or that I'm reaching my capacity or that I've exceeded my capacity is super, super important because it helps me to learn to trust that when I start to feel like I'm at capacity or that I'm above capacity, that I can trust that just that feeling alone is my assurance that I'm probably at capacity and need to start to scale back on certain things. So once I've pretty much confirmed like, yes, I'm at capacity or I've exceeded my capacity, then what do we do? What do I do? Kind of depending on what it is, I do some version of renegotiating expectations, either expectations that I have of myself or expectations that other people might have of me. Let's say that I have a project that's due that I committed to do a certain portion of it, and something has just come up and that is just really going to be a challenge for me. I either can't meet the deadline or I can't produce the deliverable by that particular deadline, but maybe I can do a smaller scale version of the deliverable, or I could do the full deliverable if I could get an extra week or so. So communicating with other people that are involved, maybe the person that's asked me to do the project or to work on the project with them, just so they know kind of what I'm dealing with. I'm really fortunate that when I've done this in the past, especially when I've done it with my coworkers and supervisors, people are really, really understanding, specifically because I give folks a heads up. So as much as possible, especially because I'm doing my weekly reviews, these things generally aren't a surprise for me. Unless I have some type of huge personal thing that happens that's unexpected, most of the stuff just kind of slowly creeps up on me and I realize I'm a little bit in over my head. So I renegotiate some expectations with people externally. Sometimes that means that I have to say no altogether to a project and just completely back out. But a lot of times it means I give some version of not now. That might mean, hey, I need 2 weeks for this other big project to wrap up. And then once that's done, I'm happy to jump back in on this other project. Or, hey, I need to put this on pause for a week so I can finish this other tight deadline and then I can jump back in on the project. And basically, getting the communication open so the other person or the other people are involved A, know that I'm not going to be able to meet the originally agreed upon expectation, and B, it's not because I have forgotten about it or because I've just been slacking. I'm very aware of it, and I realistically am not going to be able to give it the attention that it needs. I find that people really appreciate that because it allows them to kind of pivot their work without a ton of negative impact. The other thing I'll do for personal things or negotiating expectations with myself is sometimes that means I just don't do things. So as much as I would love to post videos here every single week, sometimes things come up and I just don't have the opportunity to do that. I always keep in perspective how the things that I'm choosing to do ultimately need to stay my choice. If I stayed up late and got, lost out on sleep and was super stressed just so I could get a YouTube video out on Tuesday, it's really not going to make me feel any better. And I don't imagine that the internet strangers that are out there are going to know on the back end how difficult it was for me to put out that video. And so generally what I do is I think about, in the grand scheme of all the things that I could be doing with my time over the week, are there things that are higher priority this week than putting out a YouTube video? And these days, the answer is yes, pretty often. So that means that my videos might not be as frequent, but understand that that's me renegotiating my personal expectations. And I always keep it in perspective in that bigger picture. Is this in line with my goals, with my purpose, with my vision? It's definitely something I enjoy doing. It's something that I feel like I get benefit from doing. I love it when I hear comments from people that they say that my videos are helpful or that they enjoy watching my videos. But ultimately, my purpose in life is not to get likes from internet strangers. Although, speaking of likes, definitely like this video if you're liking what you're hearing so far, and subscribe. But one of my higher priorities these days is time for myself and time for my daughter. So those things are always going to take priority for me. And any time that I happen to have left, if I have any extra time left, then that goes to my extra things like YouTube video. So that's the video for this week. I try to provide authentic information about my lived experiences, and hopefully the experiences that I'm having help someone else as well, particularly if you're struggling with kind of letting go of commitments to certain things. Sometimes people feel that they will be judged or that they're letting somebody down, but I find that authenticity is really important. And if you're being authentically true to yourself and sharing that authenticity with others, people are very receptive of it. When you can honestly say, hey, I'm a human being, I have a limit and I've reached my limit, and ask for help, that is something that I've found that other people really respond well to. So if you don't see some videos from me for a couple of weeks at a time, know that it's not that I've left YouTube forever, but that I've likely had to reprioritize certain things. And I definitely don't want to put out a video just for the sake of putting out a video. I actually want to put out something that's going to maybe be helpful for someone, that someone will be able to use in their life. So thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a great week.